Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by.
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we talk a lot about the home teams, the Saints, the Pelicans. We'll try to get into some college basketball as well. We got one of the really good ones to break it down for you. Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports joins us tonight on the panel. Just Sean and I. Love to do it with Sean and I. And, of course, we'll talk a lot about what's going on with the home teams. Sean, welcome to the show. I would say you've been able to relax, but I know you haven't, even though you're not doing all those shows every day like you guys were. But it's about ready to crank up again, my friend.
Yeah, it's if you just kind of get that buzz. Generally, Combine week is the week it really starts kicking in. That's when the offseason really starts, just because you got free agency coming. You're at the Combine. There's a big agent convention at the Combine around Indianapolis. A lot of things happening. So the offseason is about to crank up, as you saw on our nightly newscast. We've been kind of counting down our my top 10 or 10 free agent targets. Not necessarily top 10 in order, but just 10 free agent targets from other teams the Saints could be interested in if the money worked. But anyway, it's a fun time of year. When the calendar turns to March, it's really a fun time because you have NBA, NFL, college baseball, college basketball. It's all filling in. And luckily this year, got a lot to talk about other than just the Saints, because some other teams are doing well.
No, you're right. And even for you guys that have to cover all this, you're still having to get out to the ballparks for college baseball. You still got to get out to the gyms for college basketball. And then, of course, you got the arena for the Pelicans. And, oh, by the way, as you mentioned, the Combine is this week, which is kind of the opening of the new NFL season, so to speak, because, from there, free agency right around the corner. And we all know the number one topic right now is Drew Brees' contract. So let's start with that. Sean, so much conjecture on whether it's going to get done. Sean Payton comes out today. He says he believes it's going to be done smoothly. And I kind of wonder, because we've heard from both sides so far that they feel pretty confident it's going to get done, if the framework of this thing hasn't already been worked out somewhat.
Yeah, it's what I've always said about this discussion, this contract negotiation, is you just hope both sides are in the same ballpark, right? It feels like that is the case. Now, look. Was it Jimmy Garoppolo's deal, 27.4? Maybe that, gets drew up a little bit to 26.5, 27, who knows? I know there's conjecture out there about the Kirk Cousins deal, but Kirk Cousins wants to test the market. So theoretically, Drew Brees' deal is going to get done before that anyway. Yeah. So I don't think it's going to make a big deal. Or it's going to have a big impact on the Drew Brees process. As I've always said, I truly believe now officially, and I did not believe this last offseason, all season before that, Drew finally believes in New Orleans is his best opportunity to win another title. Not another city, not another team. So with that in mind, Drew is comfortable, and it's one of those, let's get the deal done. Look, Tom Condon is a skilled negotiator. Mickey Loomis is a skilled negotiator. It got contentious between those two sides back in 2012. There's no need to go there right now. Right. Drew is in the twilight of his career. He wants one more deal, one more ring. Let's just keep it fair, keep it friendly, and get it done. And by all means, right now, it feels that way. Now, if the thing lingers and lingers, which it probably will, just because that's just kind of how what people do when it comes to deadlines. But then maybe that'll be a different topic at that time. But for right now, it certainly feels like everybody's saying the right thing and a deal's going to get done.
Well, we know there's a drop dead date on this.
Exactly.
It's March 14th. And with again, $18 million in dead money kind of dangling out there, the Saints are in a position where they've got to get something done. Breeze wants to get something done. He doesn't want to have that dead money sitting out there and looking at maybe that's 2 players they could bring in that could help him win a championship. And as I've said many times, I don't think that he's going to give the hometown discount, but I do think he's going to structure the contract that is going to allow this team, at least while he's here, to be able to go out and add a few more pieces to the puzzle here. Now, when he leaves, and that's been the question I've been asking for the last couple of weeks, how far do you put this contract in the future? Where, again, when you structure this, what's the dead money going to be down the line? And you got to. And I know Loomis is thinking about this because we've talked about on this program on my radio show. These last 2 draft classes, phenomenal. Those guys will be coming up
exactly
in 2, 3, 4 years from now, and you're going to have to pay those guys handsomely to keep them.
Well, back to what you originally said, Drew's always done that. And if you ever look at Drew's contracts, the first year is always very team-friendly. I mean, it's very team-friendly. Drew gets his money via signing bonus and they guarantee base salary of that year, which is usually pretty low, that first-year base salary. But when you get a signing bonus, say it's $50 million, well, guess what? You get a check for $50 million. I mean, it's not bad. So it's a $50 million payday. But I'm with you. I think they're going to structure this in a way to where when Michael Thomas will be the next big contract comes up, when Alvin Kamara and Lattimore after that come up, at that point Drew will be off the books, and that would be it's 3 years from now or 2 years from now. Who knows what the actual date will be? I personally believe you have it 6, 6, and 6. The dead money spread out over those 3 years. I would keep it within that structure if you can do that and just take the $6 million extra dead money hit and just structure it in a way where it still lowers the cap hit back for 2018 and then obviously inflates as the years go on. But I'm with you. I think Drew doesn't want to have an unfriendly unfriendly contract to the team because that could hurt him. And they're viewed as a player or 2 away. So it's all about the structure. In the neighborhood of 2 years 50 or 3 years 75, with somewhere 40 to 50 million guaranteed has always been the nice kind of nice square even number. You're $25 million a year. If you want to knock it up a little bit, so be it. But I think that's going to be pretty much the parameters.
With that said, even though Peyton said he thinks it's going to get done fairly smoothly, a lot of people are pointing at what's going on in Indianapolis right now. As you mentioned, a agents convention, all the NFL personnel is there. This is where a lot of deals get done anyway. And they've already mentioned that Loomis and Condon, Tom Condon, the agent for Drew Brees, is going to sit down. Could we see something maybe by next week? You think this is going to go right to the deadline, as the other contracts have done?
If it doesn't go to the deadline, this was a really friendly negotiation. I don't know. It depends. Look, if everybody gets what they want, why let this thing linger? Let's move on to the next off-season topic. But look, Tom Condon is an agent. He's a negotiator. He's going to make sure he gets the absolute best for his client. Mickey has always been that way when it comes to the Saints. He is not going to sign a deal unless he feels like it's going to help the Saints. So as much as I would like to say it gets done this week, if it goes all the way down to March 13th at 11:40, so be it. I think that could happen. But maybe somewhere in the middle there. I mean, look, you'd like to think, like I said before, where everyone's at in their stages of their respective careers, that Tom Condon's got some young up-and-comers he's got to worry about. Let's get Drew done, taken care of, and move on to the next person.
Especially because Drew wants to get it done before the 14th, and after the 14th.
He showed his hand already. I mean, he already showed his hand.
Exactly. The rest of his clients will then get done. And, of course, from the Saints standpoint, they want to know a finite amount of money they have to spend going in. And, of course, we found out yesterday that something that a lot of people have heard whispers around the city for a while, Zach Strief is going to retire. Sean, I'm kind of lukewarm on this. I got to be honest.
Conflicting reports. I don't know if you saw the report today that there was a report out, I believe it was WWL Radio, that said he has not decided yet.
Right.
Who knows?
Well, I've heard whispers.
I've heard both. To be honest,
that he wants to. I will say this: I hope he doesn't. And look, I know it's a $3 million deal there as far as what he'd be making, but Teron Armstead has been often injured. You got Ryan Ramczyk, who came in and played really, really well. And look, there's no doubt that Strief will probably not unseat him. But Senio Kelemete is probably going to go to another team. He said the other day he'd like to come back to New Orleans, but we all know he's going to probably get a more lucrative deal, and he wants to be a starter.
He's a starter.
Okay, so now if you lose Strief and Kelemete, you now have to add 2 pieces to that offensive line. Look, he's a great insurance policy. I'm talking about Zach Strief. If ultimately someone goes down on that line at that tackle position, you have the flexibility with Pete Ramczyk to be able to move some guys around. And, if you got to slide Ramczyk into that left tackle position and then put Strief back on at the right tackle, remember, we're just a year removed from him being one of the best right tackles in football. And I realize there comes a time when your body just gives out in the age, and maybe he doesn't want to work out and get his body back. But come on. Losing both of those players in 1 year, that's going to hurt this team, like it or not, in a position of strength, which with the offensive line last year.
When the depth was tested last year, I mean, they were all the way down to Josh Laribius playing snaps last year, and you were lucky in that you had an injured Max Unger who healed up just in time and played every single snap, and Ryan Ramczyk played every single snap. So the depth was tested. They passed the test, and you're going to take a blow to that depth if Senio Kelemete walks and Zach Strief retires, which means I would expect them, A, to sign a veteran reserve guy, and B, draft 1, if not 2, offensive line. Maybe draft 1, get another undrafted free agent that you can develop. Yes. But, look, depth is going to be an issue because your starting 5 is set. But as you mentioned, Teron Armstead, look, he's just kind of got that, for whatever reason, that body that's prone to injury a little bit. He just kind of seems gimpy at times. So, yeah, look, if Zach Strief retires, then you got to add depth, something they think they probably would have done anyway. I do know this. The organization has gone with the mindset that they're not expecting Zach Strief back. So if that is, and from what I understand, that's been since during the season. So if that is indeed the case, you would think they have a plan in place to at least address the depth situation along that offensive line. The question is, do you go tackle? Do you go interior? Maybe both. Yeah. Because Max Unger is coming up. He's got 1 more year left after this year on his deal. Who knows how he's going to hold up health-wise? He's going to be 33 years old, I believe. And then obviously you have the often injured Teron Armstead. So which way do you go? Maybe you go both.
Yeah. And, one thing you have to look at, Strief, is beyond what he's done on the playing field. His leadership in the locker room, his mentorship of the offensive line, his voice in that locker room. All that is very critical to a young team. And let's face it, this is still a very young football team.
You've given me credit a lot for the 2014 season of the locker room.
Yeah, absolutely, okay? As you should have been.
It hit me after one game where they really were beat up. They really were beat bad. They had terrible effort. They lacked professionalism. And I walk into the locker room. First off, it was well after the grace period you're allowed to go into the locker room. We go into the locker room, and it is the desert. There is no one in there except for one player, Zach Strief. Zach Strief's answering the questions for everybody else. I remember talking to Jim Henderson, the recently retired Jim Henderson, after the game, saying, it's not the responsibility of Zach Strief to basically cover for everyone else who played like crap, let's be honest. And then obviously, had to answer questions for basically everyone else. But that's the professional that he was. That type of professionalism, it's not that it's rare. It's just when you have it, you hold on to it as long as you possibly can. He's the ultimate pro. That's why a 7th-round pick out of Northwestern can last 12 years with one team. Yeah. I mean, it just doesn't happen in today's NFL.
No, it doesn't. And you see it, Sean. You see it all the time. You see it at practice. You see it at the locker room. You see it on the sidelines. The respect he demands, and of course, always teaching, always talking. So this is, it's a loss on the field. It's a loss, especially if you're saying, oh man, you got a quality backup and a guy that just a year or so removed from being one of the best right tackles in football. But what you're losing in that locker room, that institutional knowledge, the mentorship, the leadership, that's huge.
I totally agree. And he's a guy, though, at his stage of his life, I think he just had his first child. He's got a brewery in the city. Yes. He's played a lot of football. He's been through a lot of ups and a lot of downs. I can understand if he's at the point where, you know what, I just don't have it for the physical grind. I'm tired. I'll be close. I'll be a mentor. I'll be around. I'm in New Orleans. Because he's a local. Yeah. He's one of those. No doubt. I've worked with a few of them where they come in, they're not from here, but they become locals. I think he's one of those type of guys.
May not be New Orleans board, but New Orleans certified.
He will be.
No doubt about it. lot of talk now about Kenny Vaccaro. I think everybody pretty much knows at this point Kenny Vaccaro is not going to be offered a contract. He'll go somewhere. He'll make a lucrative salary. Why do you think they're moving away from him? Now, look, I think they've been planning this for the last couple of years. You don't go out and spend a couple second-round picks on safeties if ultimately you're not planning for the departure of Kenny Vaccaro.
I just think slowly but surely he's kind of fallen out of favor with Sean Payton. There's just little things here and there from the suspension at the end of the 2016 season. I believe I forget what it was exactly, but he missed the final 4 games. They could have used him.
Right.
He's been banged up a little bit. I can recall him getting benched in 2014, his second year. And I just think as an organization, they feel like, look, he's going to want to test the market. Good for him. We feel like we can replace him, and I completely agree. Look, I feel like Kenny Vaccaro stood out when the defense was bad. He looked like a very good player on a bad defense. But when the defense got better, I don't think he was bad. I think he kind of slipped a little, maybe to more of the middle of the pack of that defense. Cam Jordan has been the best player regardless if they were good or bad.
Yes.
And that wasn't necessarily the case with Kenny Vaccaro. I just think overall it's probably just time to move on. And look, he was a good player for a few years here, and he can still make plays, and he's still got some that new age versatility. But I mean, look, I just think the Saints, and they've done well drafting safeties as well.
Yes, they have. Now, how do they replace him? Because there's a couple schools of thought here, and I've discussed on the radio show. We talked about on this show as well. Do you go with the slot corner that can take that third receiver? Or do you go with another hybrid safety that can play the run, that's almost kind of that fourth linebacker, but you can swing him over when you need to cover a tight end or a wide receiver?
I think they're gonna look hard at a nickel corner because I think when it comes to 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, that's probably their best case scenario. When they play a team that likes to play 2 tight ends, you probably shift to that heavy nickel, which is really what Kenny Vaccaro was doing. And I think in that regard, Von Bell, I think is perfectly suited for that. Now, he's a little handsy too when he plays in coverage, and sometimes he has some dumb penalties. But I think he's a good blitzer. I think he's solid against the run. I think he's a short tackler. I think he's Kenny Vaccaro, quite frankly. Right. I think he'll be better playing closer to the line of scrimmage as well. So I just think they're set at safety. I really do. And if they can draft one mid-round, and they've done a pretty good job of cultivating these guys. So if anything, if you had a nickel corner, all of a sudden, you give Dennis Allen some flexibility with the scheme, depending on how you feel matchups go.
We're going to talk about another guy that's got an Achilles tendon injury in a little while when we talk about the Pelicans, but Alex Okafor.
It's an interesting one.
I liked him. I liked the deal. As soon as they made the deal, I knew that when he was healthy, that he could be not just a guy that could rush the passer, but be pretty good in run support. But again, another year, another injury. And this is an injury that he's a big guy. You talk about Boogie Cousins and coming back at 6'11", 275. This is a guy that relies on speed and explosion to be the best he can be. What do you do with Alex Okafor?
Well, he's a first step guy, so he's a speed guy. And I really felt like he was really coming into his own.
Really was.
And don't look at his sack numbers. Look at the pressures, because I just have this image of 57 turning that corner. Something brought me back to my childhood a little bit, quite frankly. But he's a first step guy, and I do know that explosiveness sometimes can, with that Achilles tear, is the first thing to go. If you're the Saints, certainly you want to make sure he's going to be medically cleared. But I don't know what you do money-wise. I mean, and how much is he going to want on the open market? My guess is you probably let him test the market. Maybe if he likes it here in New Orleans, he's able to come back and see if the Saints can match. Who knows? But if it were me, Alex Okafor, and the market's not right, he may end up having to sign another one-year contract to maybe prove he's healthy enough to get a long-term deal.
A little off topic here, but you said it. I've talked about it before, and I'll throw it out there right now. 8, 7, 77, 57 should not be worn by any other player. And you're going to have 9 coming up. Those are 5 numbers. You've got, with the exception of Archie Manning, who's not in the Hall of Fame, Willie Rowe, Morton Anderson, and Ricky Jackson are all in the Hall of Fame. Drew Brees will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. There is no way that anyone should be wearing those numbers again, ever.
I remember talking, my first sit down, we do a segment sitting down with Sean. It was the first year we did it, and Okafor was the first guy I had this year. And I said, hey, man, do you know about 57? He goes, oh, I know about number 57, and trust me, if I didn't know, the fans have stopped me on the street, have told me. So I think he understands the significance of it. He's not the first player to wear 57.
No, he's not, and that's the horrible thing about it. Some guys that have come, actually, it's been kind of a cursed number since the ones that have worn it. Because we've never seen anybody really play really well in 57 since the guy that wore 57.
Right.
Again, that's really something the Saints really need to do and really need to take care of. Those numbers right there should never be worn again by another player.
Look, I agree. I don't know if it's something if it's an NFL rule or what. But
I don't know if it's an NFL rule, but I don't know if you can retire numbers anymore. There are some that retire. Look, Silky Powell did it with 8. No, right. 8's not retired. Nobody wears 8. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I would just somebody comes in needs 57, 7, 77, 7, 8, or 9. Sorry,
Done.
Those are all those. We don't make those jerseys anymore.
Yeah,
they're not there.
I agree.
Let's get back to the topic at hand. Jeff Ireland. Big article this morning with Josh Kassenstein in NOLA.com about the future of Jeff Ireland. A few years ago, they had given him the assistant general manager's title. And I've talked about this before. At some point, Mickey Loomis has got to be the guy that oversees both the Saints and the Pelicans, maybe with another title. Mm-hmm. I know he probably doesn't want to give up the GM title of the Saints, but man, Jeff Ireland has learned his lesson from Miami, and this guy, based on the last 2 drafts, can evaluate talent. And I would surely hate to see him move on to another club, because I think that was part of the problem with the Saints. The Saints, when they came here in 2006, Peyton had a great group that was around him, mm-hmm. and slowly but surely other teams started picking off his front office personnel, and they weren't bringing guys back in the fold who were as good as the guys that they lost. Ireland is every bit as good as what they had back in 2006, and if I had to make him general manager in name only, I would do what I need to do to keep him here.
I agree, and here's the thing. I talked to a scout, he told me, he said, some GMs, a lot of times in the NFL, the GM is really, you're kind of the liaison between the operations and the owner, and sometimes you're talking the owner off the leg, sometimes you're calming them down, sometimes you're just kind of informing. Mickey is probably very good at that.
Yes.
But some scouts that become GMs, they want to watch, they want to sit in their film and watch practice tape for 3 hours. Jeff Ireland strikes me as that kind of guy. From what I understand, he is a scout's scout. He just enjoys the process of grinding through tape, going through prospects. And Sean Payton said something interesting in his very quick end-of-year press conference where he said, I like the players we got, and I like the process we used to get to those players. It went off of my head. That's a Jeff Ireland
mm-hmm.
compliment right there. And he's the guy that inside that building has earned 100% trust, and the results have spoken for themselves. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know who is a bigger catalyst for, other than the players themselves, of rebuilding this new generation of Saints players right in front of our eyes.
Right.
For the 16 and 17 draft classes, basically, that's your core. Throw in Andrews Pete from 2015, that's your core going forward. So he's actually done a lot, and I think he's a guy that you hope you hold on to him as long as you possibly can. If he's a guy that Sean Payton likes that much, and he could go to another place, don't be surprised if he does everything he can to make sure he's.
We've seen Ryan Pace move on. We've seen some other guys move on. But long before Pace moved on, they groomed Pace, okay, and then all of a sudden he's in Chicago. Mm-hmm. They had other guys that Peyton feels comfortable with, because I think all of us.
That's it.
That's about right, really, because again, at the end of the day, he's got to feel comfortable that he's deferring these. When anything has to do with scouting,
that's an underrated aspect. The talent evaluator, head coach dynamic. There's got to be a trust there, because that has ruined organizations when there's no trust there.
Yes, agreed.
And look, and Peyton's a very alpha coach.
Right.
He's very alpha inside. And
somebody's got to be able to talk him off the ledge too.
But you got to have, Silvio Dante, it's a Tony Soprano. You got to have the guy that's got his trust a little bit. You know what I'm saying? He's got to be able to. He's a guy that will listen and pay attention if you've earned the trust of Sean Payton. I think Jeff Ireland's done that.
I will say this about Peyton. I think it's a good thing he's on the competition committee. I've noticed throughout the years, coaches on the competition committee, they tend to get the benefit of the doubt on calls in games. I mean, we've seen when the Saints have been on the opposite end of that. I do like the fact that he's on the competition committee. I think it will help this team going forward. I really do.
I think for a guy like him, that's a very sharp football mind. I think it helps the NFL to have a guy like him. Look, Sean Payton's a very smart guy, and he's very football IQ through the roof. So I think that's very. I I think it's good for him to be on that. The two big things that they're taking up, the defensive pass interference, I think is a game changer.
Oh, yeah.
That is a game changer.
And if you would, elaborate a little bit for the audience, because it is a game changer. Because I was watching NFL Network the other night. Well, a Green Bay corner was saying, if they change the NFL rule, I'll be committing pass interference all the time.
If he blows past me, all I got to do is tackle
All I got to do is tackle him.
15 yards.
Right.
I mean, look, college football survived this rule. You don't see that in college football.
Right.
So I don't think there's going to be I don't think there's going to be just crazy, intentional grounding or intentional fouls, if you will, by DBs. But I just think, a 48-yard penalty was just ridiculous.
Right.
I never liked it. So
you don't like the penalty on a spot foul
no,
plus?
I like the 15-yard. And then look, clarifying a catch needs to happen. Catch the ball. If you maintain possession of the catch, it's a catch. It doesn't matter if you fall to the ground for that and you bobbled a little bit.
They blew that completely, and they have to fix that. There's no doubt about it. John Kuhn saying he might like to come back. Zach Line is what, a restricted free agent or unrestricted?
No, unrestricted.
Unrestricted free agent. What do you think happens there? Zach Line played pretty well for
I
this team
like Zach
last year.
Line, and he's younger. And he was actually a running back, not a fullback at SMU, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I spoke with the same source that told me John Kuhn wanted to come back. I know they like him. Can't keep two though. Not in today's NFL. You're lucky you get one in today's NFL. I don't know which way my guts lean in there, just because Kuhn can't. Remember Kuhn, he was eligible for that short-term IR, and they had one to give, so they let him come back last year. I don't think the window. If he had to play one more game, he would have been able to play, but. Yes. I think they like Kuhn. He's a veteran. It probably depends on the makeup of that locker room. You can't have too many young guys.
Right.
And he's about 35 or 36, so he could be a little bit of the kind of OG status inside that locker room.
Let's talk about what you think happens in free agent. Let's talk about Saints players first. Delvin Breaux, do they tender him? Do they let him go? Test the market? Is he back as a New Orleans Saint? I know you've written about this.
I think they should tender him. I think it's a low-risk, potentially high-reward situation. I think he's a guy that if he's not healthy or he's not the same player once you come back, it's not a whole lot of financial resources that you committed to him. Now, that's the lowest round tender, not the highest round tender. Yes. That would be somewhat foolish. I don't think the Saints would do that. So it's original round compensation. If another team wanted to outbid for his services, so be it. That's the way it goes. But, sometimes when I think about it, if they don't want to tender him and they say, okay, well, let's just bring him back for 1 year, $1 million, and he doesn't have any other offers, so that's what they'll say, then he may have to take that. But I just think Delvin Breaux is an unfortunate situation, but I think it's so much easier to find a slot receiver, who I'm sure you're going to ask me about next, than it is to find a legitimate NFL corner. And I think the Saints, the need at corner is greater. So to me, he's a risk I'd be willing to take.
What happens if they re-sign him and he's 100% healthy, Crawley's healthy, Lattimore's healthy?
Let him battle it out.
Okay.
Let him battle it out.
Was one better at the slot than the other in your opinion?
No, I think
both guys are outside.
I think both guys are outside,
Me too.
and you could always look. The draft's coming. This is good problems to have.
Yeah.
This is a competition at a very important position. Let Delvin Breaux and King Crawley battle it out. He's been injured, so you're going to need back up to him anyway. And if Crawley's better, so be it. If Delvin Breaux is better, so be it. If Delvin Breaux returns to 2015, Breaux and Lattimore, that's a pretty dynamic cornerback duo.
Yeah.
If you got 2015 Delvin Breaux.
You'll save a lot of money, too, because I think cornerback is one of the needs on this team, and I think in free agency is where you have to go and get it. We'll talk about Malcolm Butler in a minute, but you mentioned it. Willie Snead, what happens there?
Willie Snead's an interesting case just because there was no real logical explanation for the drop-off. I know he had an injury early in the year with the hamstring, but then he just kind of disappeared. At some point, that would have gotten better. And the worst part about it was you can just feel the offense move on without him, even with him on the field. It's like Drew wasn't even going his way up until the fourth down throw against Minnesota. Again, he's another low risk, potentially high reward by tendering him. I personally think of those two, Delvin is the one that gets tendered, and Snead tests the market, and we'll see what happens. But it's just one of those unexplainable things. Like what happened? God, it was so good. And here's the thing. It was so necessary to have him last year.
Yes.
Those third down numbers were terrible last year. I got to believe not having a guy that can move the sticks really hurt that.
And, of course, Chase Daniel's also an unrestricted free agent. A lot of people haven't talked about that. You think he's back, or you think they go with a young quarterback behind Drew Brees? Not necessarily Taysom Hill.
I could see them bringing him back, but if they don't draft a quarterback, they bring Chase Daniel back and let him and Taysom Hill battle it out for the backup quarterback position at that point.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll continue some Saints talk for a few minutes, and we'll get into some Pelicans. We're going to open the phone lines. We hope to talk to get to Will Wade and LSU and talk about that situation. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports is my guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll be right back.
Air conditioning, heating, and refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhardt has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhardt's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhardt's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhardt's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Amco Fence, locally owned and operated since 1976. Fully licensed and insured and a member of the BBB, Amco serves both residential and commercial customers. If you're looking to repair, replace, or install a fence for security or aesthetic reasons, Amco Fence supplies wooden, metal, chain link, vinyl, and ornamental or automatic gates. Amco aims to satisfy your fencing needs. Amco Fence, 504-468-9559 or AmcoFenceCompany.com.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports is on our panel. Sean, let's continue some Saints talk as we go forward. Let's talk a little bit about free agency. You've got every night you're talking about 10 players that you'd like to see the Saints either get or take a shot at. Let me ask you positions of need first going into free agency, in your opinion.
Pass rusher, but something I've learned really over the last 3 or 4 years of covering just football. You pull 32 to NFL teams, I'd be willing to bet over 80% of them need a pass rusher.
Absolutely.
It's hard. They're hard to find nowadays, and you're lucky if you got one. Most teams want to.
And if you got them, you're holding on to them.
So I'd say pass rusher because outside of Alex Okafor, you have Trey Henderson, who I like a solid rotational player. Al-Qadim Muhammad, you have no idea. Haoli Kikaha, who may or may not be with this team, who may or may not survive salary cap cuts, but he's often injured. I think at some point you got to cut bait there. So there's no doubt that's an obvious one. Tight end, certainly a need, a pass-catching tight end, slot receiver, nickel corner, and then you can add a body to the linebacker core. I think you can certainly use that. A little shot of athleticism there, whether it be a Mike, a Will, or maybe even a Sam, although the Sam doesn't play nearly as much.
Yes.
And another need that it's not a glaring need because I don't think you need a starter, but I think you need rotational depth is at defensive tackle. Another run stuffer.
Yeah.
I think we have Davison, Onyemata, and Sheldon Rankins. I think if you add another defensive tackle, maybe mid-round or maybe a veteran. I suggested Benny Logan on the show last night.
I like that suggestion.
That would be one. I think he'd be pretty cheap and he's a solid player. So those are a few needs. But let me just say this, Eric. I don't know how you feel, but I don't feel that glaring gotta have him.
No.
So you're signing and drafting for depth, which is it's a great position.
Maybe
to be
athletic
in
linebacker is something I think they need, but they could get away without.
I'm okay. I'm higher on AJ Klein than maybe some, and I like the way Manti Te'o played at the mic.
No, he played well.
I think Alex Anzalone, if he can stay healthy, is a very good weak side linebacker. So maybe if you want to add another, Mike or Will just to help yourself out with Alex Anzalone's injury history, then maybe so. But I don't know that I put that in the top 3. I put that in the top 4 or 5.
Cornerback. I do think that's a need, simply because I'd like to see, much like I'd like to see an athletic linebacker come in, maybe at the mic and push an A.J. Klein. I'd like to see a cornerback come in and push Ken Crawley. What do you think happened with Malcolm Butler?
I don't think he comes to the Saints. I think he wants too much money, and I don't think what you get is enough of an upgrade over what you have to warrant that type of cost. I hope I didn't lose the audience there. But I think he's going to want $13, $14 million a season. And to me, what he gives you, he's a respectable NFL corner, a top 10, top 12 NFL corner. I don't know that he's that much better, far and away better, than Ken Crawley. Now, if you got him for $8 million, absolutely sign the check right now, but that's not going to happen. Malcolm Butler wants to get paid. Cornerbacks get paid in the NFL. So while I understand the interest based on what happened last year, if I were the Saints, I would hold off on Malcolm Butler.
See, my hesitation is I think he declined a little bit last year. And the other thing is something you and I have talked about a lot. Belichick went with Stephon Gilmore.
Yes.
I mean, that tells you all you need to know. Yes. Butler was homegrown, okay, and he saw all he needed to know out of Butler, and he didn't re-sign Butler to big money. And then again, in the most critical game of the year, he doesn't play him. Now, off
it cost him. I mean,
it did. There's no doubt it cost him.
The Eagles ran all over. Threw the ball all over him.
Absolutely.
It cost them.
Absolutely, it cost him. So I have soured on Malcolm Butler, to be honest with you, and would like, if they're going to go on that way, they're going to go that way. I think they have to go with another cornerback, or maybe again. Look, they've done pretty well in drafting or bringing undrafted free agents in, so we'll see what happens there. The final question, everybody wants to talk about it, Jarvis Landry. I've said on the radio show, if you bring a Jarvis Landry in, well, maybe it lessens the need for a dynamic pass rushing tight end. But I go back to Brandon Cooks being traded. And the reason why they traded Brandon Cooks was, maybe some of the things in the locker room, the selfishness after that Los Angeles Rams game, all that kind of came into play. But they saw Michael Thomas, and they realized that Michael Thomas is going to have to be paid. And they don't want to have to pay two top-flight wide receivers, especially when you're paying a top-flight quarterback.
It's a good point, and I think they viewed Brandon Cooks as a bit of a luxury. Within this offense, his particular skill set wasn't absolutely necessary, and I think they proved themselves right this year with I don't think Ted Ginn was quite the player Brandon Cooks was, but I think he was better than maybe we all thought he was going to be. More than just a 9-route runner, guy that can get on, run the jet
and
sweep
caught the ball this year.
Caught the ball well, ran the shallow cross. Who he was struggling with that in training camp, trust me, but he was able to get that and ran a little bit more of a diverse route tree. But back to your original point about Jarvis Landry, because I'm trying to get to everyone that's linked the Saints to Jarvis Landry. It's been. What teams would be a good fit for Jarvis Landry? It hasn't been necessarily reported as fact the Saints have shown interest. Sure. I'm trying to separate conjecture from fact that they're interested.
Well, he is a fit.
He is definitely a fit, and that's a no-brainer.
Right.
The question is, he wants $15, $60 million a season for a slot receiver.
Right.
I don't see the Saints doing it for the reasons you just said with Michael Thomas.
That's the guy who's going to get paid.
And I'm not convinced that they're in the trade discussions yet.
Right.
Could very well get there. But I'm not convinced yet that that's the case.
Well, remember, again, Jeff Ireland has a connection there with Miami and Jarvis Landry. If I'm not mistaken, Ireland was the general manager.
Was he? Okay.
I'm almost positive when Jarvis Landry was there. It could be wrong on that. He could have been gone the year before. But there is still a connection in Miami. We'll see what happens. Let's shift gears to the Pelicans. A good story from once. How many times I sat on this program and berated the Pelicans? Come on. Great story. 7 games in a row. Western Conference Player of the Month for the month of February. I got to throw these stats at you. That Will Guillory had this in the Times-Picayune this morning. 35 points a game, 13 rebounds through a game through the month of February. Joining Moses Malone. Okay, Moses Malone as one of the only players in the past 40 seasons to average 35 and 10 for the entire month. And of course, throw over 50% shooting in that as well. Pelicans are 9 games over 500 for the first time since the 10-11 season. They're 5th in the West now. They're half a game out of fourth place. Now, again, based on what we're doing tonight, this show re-airs on a Friday. And I think that the fans will now be awakened by what happened in San Antonio last night. I had not realized, and I said this on the radio show this morning, that the Pelicans/Hornets, 5-24, okay, all time in San Antonio. That's just mind-boggling. Finally, and last night's 121-116 victory. The way they came back.
They had the lead until like 3 minutes left in the game, right?
Oh, yes. And look.
They didn't have their first lead until
And even with Drew Holiday missing 2 critical free throws, Anthony Davis coming in with ice water in his veins. And Anthony Davis is hot and cold on the free throw line. Sometimes I kind of cringe when he goes up there to shoot, a technical shot because he's an okay free throw shooter. But he nailed it when you needed to. Look, this is a different team without Boogie Cousins. This is a team that offensive rebounds, the stats prove it out. They're second in assists. They were second in the paint. They've always been really good in assist and paint, even when Boogie was here. But this is a team that's getting the most out of every single player that comes on the court now, led by a guy in Anthony Davis who seemed to be deferring to Boogie Cousins. All of a sudden, he has exploded, and he's the Anthony Davis that we all have seen for years here in New Orleans that we weren't seeing when he was playing along side Boogie.
Well, I don't know that I agree with that, but I don't. This is something we haven't seen from Anthony Davis. My biggest criticism of Anthony Davis has always been, it's your team. Take it over. Tell everybody to get the hell out of the way and take over. He's finally there. Mm-hmm. He's finally there. It's just not his personality. Somewhere it clicked. Maybe it was the phone call from DeMarcus Cousins. But when he did that interview with ESPN, he said, I got to be Russell Westbrook. I'm watching, I'm thinking, okay, clearly he's wanting to put this on his shoulders. He's embraced it. I mean, look at his demeanor on the court. There is a different look in his eye. Agreed. I love it, man. Mm-hmm. I absolutely love it because he's got that kind of talent. He's got that kind of takeover ability, and he plays in New Orleans. He's tired of losing. He's tired of being one and done in the playoffs. He's only done it once, but he's tired of being kind of in this situation, this constant flux of what are we doing with the coach? What are we doing with the GM? What's Anthony Davis going to do? Nah, man, I'm living in the present. I'm living today, and I am taking over. I'm seizing this opportunity, and the results speak for themselves. That was not their best effort last night, I thought. No. And they grinded their way to a win in a place they haven't won in a very long time. So let me apologize to the Pelicans. I said they were going to be limping to the finish line without DeMarcus Cousins. They've done a total opposite, right? They've done a complete 180. The ball's flowing better. They're moving better. They're scoring better, clearly. The only question I have, can they consistently win games? Do they always have to put up 120 to win a game? I mean, can they win a game when they score 85?
Well, I'm going to say, Sean, the way that Gentry coaches and coming from that D'Antoni tree, that's what it is. It's about pace and it's about scoring. Now, I will say this: they played better defense. The most impressive stat to me is, and it was on the broadcast last night, is they've increased their rebounding stat. They were at the bottom of the league in offensive rebounding. And now they're in the middle of the league in offensive rebound. And you see it. You see Anthony Davis around the basket going to the board. You see the guards going to the boards. Emeka Okafor has given him a physical presence in the minute. He goes to the boards. And, oh, wait a minute. Nobody's talking about Niko Mirotic and what he has brought to the table in terms of his ability to score from the outside, inside. Underrated as a defensive player. And, oh, yes, he hits the boards as well.
He just, for a guy that got here, 3 weeks ago? That may be maybe not even that long. He blends in quite well from a chemistry standpoint. I just think he fits in well. He's one of these guys. You check his stats. He seems to do a lot of things.
He's a better version of Ryan Anderson.
Right. It just feels like he's a little more of a complete player than Ryan Anderson. I feel like he's blended in well, and I just think as a whole, you knew. They may have made this deal regardless with Mirotic. Even with
even if Boogie was here, they probably made the deal.
Even if Boogie didn't go down. But I just think as a whole, they've caught their stride. They're playing with some confidence. And now, what are they, 7-2 in overtime games? And how many close games have they won? That goes a long way when you're, in a confidence and a belief in yourself sort of way.
Well, and the confidence, I agree with you, because now you have individuals on this team that are everyone is contributing now. Ian Clark is playing more minutes. He's contributing. Emeka Okafor has come off the scrap heap. I mean, I literally laughed out loud when I saw they sign Emeka Okafor to a 10-day contract. Literally laughed out loud and said, okay, what's Emeka Okafor going to do at 35? I saw his body when he hit the TV screen, and I'm like, okay, well, he looks the part still. He's always in it. But you know what? A lot of guys can lift weights, right?
Right.
But The guy is playing. He has been he's eating up space in the middle. He's taking on those big centers. He's being physical. Even if he can't get the rebound, we've seen it throughout his career when he was in New Orleans. The tap out. I mean, and it's been contagious. Everyone now has a vested interest in what's going on in this team. It's not just on the sidelines waving the towel. Check Diallo's playing. Ian Clark's playing. Darius Miller's playing. You go right down the line. Guys that are playing. Look, Liggins is playing. They brought the kid from the D League the other day, the G League the other day that's playing with them now. So everybody's getting playing time, and I think that also goes a long way in what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and truth be told, AD didn't have his best game last night.
No, he did not.
So
Bardeschi in what, 26
we had this
and 14?
debate in the Fox 8 Sports office. A lot of other guys hit a lot of shots, and it kept them in that game, and they made that fourth quarter run.
Each one more.
Exactly. So, that's my big question. Because AD is on a roll right now, but he had his first kind of quote unquote off night in February last night. If he has another off night, are they going to be able to keep winning? Now they beat the Spurs. Can they do that consistently? We'll see. But I just think with Anthony Davis leading the way and this new mindset that he has. I like the Pelicans' chances of getting to March and April here and into the playoffs.
I don't think you can glaze over that win last night.
No,
I mean that's
the win that wakes everybody up.
Right. That's the franchise that has had their number. That's the franchise they've never been able to get over, really. Okay.
I agree.
Which kind of leads me to my next line of questioning. And look, I talked about it on Monday when Phoenix was coming to town, and then I said, there's not going to be a lot of people there, but this team is winning, and it's Monday night and it's Phoenix, and Jeff Duncan of the Times-Picayune did an article on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, Rod Walker did one talking about the fan base. Wake up, support this team. Look, the fan base is not stupid. Okay, they understand. First of all, ownership has caused this because they are third in the pecking order behind the Saints and the horse racing stables. And then some people say, well, if ownership doesn't care, why should I care? Then management doesn't trust the management group. And when I talk about Dell Demps and the failures that they've had in terms of free agency, giving away the draft choices. I mean, the best thing you could say about Dell Demps' tenure here was the Anthony Davis ping pong balls falling his way. Everything else that he's done for the most part is kind of blown up with guys getting injured. The Mirotic deal was a fantastic deal. The deal to bring Emeka Okafor has been a good deal, but he's always been pretty good at bringing those fringe players in. Okay? And then, look.
He's always done a pretty good job with that mid-season deal where you say, okay.
That's true. But people have kind of lost faith in him as a general manager.
That's no doubt.
Okay? And it's 9 years. I mean, you don't see
this isn't like a newcomer on the block.
This is 9 years of this. People saying, well, come on, they don't think they're going to get out their own way. People didn't want CP3 to walk, okay? He ended up walking. Why? Because he knew he couldn't win a championship. And that goes back to the old regime. I know that. George Shinn was cash poor. He was never going to put the players around him that was necessary. When they traded Tyson Chandler, that was the end of that. And everybody thought that this was a nucleus of a team that could one day win a championship. They didn't want people, the fan base didn't want him to match the offer to Eric Gordon. They would have rather him walk away from the Eric Gordon deal and get no compensation for CP3 at the end of the day than to have what we had here, which is a guy that was often injured and just didn't play well. And then, for better or for worse, for a long time, nobody has had faith in Alvin Gentry, especially after what happened. Monty Williams takes to the playoffs, you fire him, Alvin Gentry comes in, and he's had no success. So I put this on ownership, and I put this on management, why the Smoothie King Center has not been filled. Now, with that said, this win against San Antonio, this 7-game win streak, I think Smoothie King Center is packed for the rest of the season, and I think they can bring the fans back. What are your thoughts?
I think the fans have always showed when winning picks up, when it comes to basketball, they'll show up. It just started. Within the last, 10, 12 days, it just started. When you talk about the 3 wins before the All-Star break, and then now, and I like Jeff and I like Rod, but I like both those guys.
Both guys do a great job.
Excellent columnists. But I'm not into that. I'm not into this blame the fan thing. I'm not. Look, I'm the Wolves through and through. So a lot of these fans they're our people. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not into that. So this isn't like this team is a perennial playoff power and they're struggling to get 10,000 a night. This is a team that's been a bottom feeder for most of the tenure here under Dell Demps, and all of a sudden they get a great win streak, and then what we're supposed to expect 20,000 in the arena every night takes a little time. But I'm with you. It's March. out of football season. You're never going to sell out in November, December here. We've talked about this. You're never going to sell out here.
Nobody's paying attention to it.
You're never
look, the NBA has them on the road during that time for a reason.
And look, even January, if we're being honest, if the Saints are in it or LSU, what have you, I'm not into this. Or what's up with the fans? The fans are going to come. This is a loyal fan base in terms of just we love New Orleans. What is New Orleans?
New Orleans?
Right. And winning is happening. I guarantee you, next home game, those stands will be filled.
I agree with you. And look, we were a basketball town at one time. We went out and saw our collegiate teams. We went out and saw the New Orleans Jazz. Those days are over. People don't go out to the games. There's just too much for people to do. They get games at their house, NBA, NCAA. They don't have to go. A lot of people just don't go to the games. And then there's the change in the demographics in terms of more affluent people moving to the North Shore. When the Jazz were here, the North Shore was where people went for their country house, okay? All right? And now that's where people live. And it's hard for people to go to the North Shore, get the kids, load them up, come back, even though it's a 7 p.m. tip-off because they want to get people back to the North Shore a little bit before 10 or 11 o'clock. It's a different dynamic than it was when the Jazz was here.
Well, yeah, and look, that's just something you got to deal with the change in times and changing demographics and where people live. I'll say this: I went as a fan Monday night, and there wasn't a lot of people there, but it was a good game. And where we were sitting, my wife and my two daughters were sitting, very reasonably priced for one of the best seats in the house. All you can for your food and drink. So, if you're interested, it's a pretty good buy if you're really interested in going to NBA games.
And look, I think Rod Walker wrote about this, but I have a friend that's involved in the secondary ticket market here in New Orleans. He sends me stuff all the time about what's going on with the secondary market. $3 to get into that game on Monday. $3. Okay, it was $1.50 back when the Jazz were here with Shoetown tickets at the top of the dome. It was $3 for the top rung of seats in the arena. I will say this also before we go to the phone lines. We'll go to the phone lines in a moment. This fan base is a little spoiled too now. The championship with the Saints, the people kind of expect a winner. They want a winner. Okay, I'm not saying they won't support a team that's not a winner, but they get up and they get excited about a winner. The Pelicans are winning now. I think that brings the fans back to the Smoothie King Center.
And look, this is Southeast Louisiana. This is football country, okay? They're always going to come first. We know that. That doesn't mean that you can't be successful here with basketball. The key is it's winning, but show some consistency. They don't. I don't think the fan base is demanding championships out of the Pelicans. They demand a team that wins.
Right. And they want to make sure you're winning enough and you're satisfying Anthony Davis because they don't want to see Anthony Davis walk out the door like CP3 did.
Yeah, and look, that's why I think, this 7-game win streak, best thing to happen to this franchise, both on the court and at the box office as well.
To the phone lines we go. 866-3200. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Sean Fazende, Fox 8 Sports, our guest. And Toby from Gretna is up first today. Toby, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Eric. Tight end Trey Burton from the Eagles. Is he Larry Burton's son? And number two, what type of salary you think he's going to come in? I'll hang up. Thank you.
He was my guy last night.
Yeah, that's your guy last night. He is not Larry Burton's son, okay, the former Saint wide receiver. But you had him on your list last night.
I did. I think he's one of these players that's kind of been that's been steadily developing. He's a guy who played a lot of positions in college, if I'm not mistaken. He played the flex. I think he played a little quarterback at one point, if I'm not mistaken. You saw he did the Super Bowl special. I think he's a guy it's going to be moderately priced, probably around $5 to $6 million a year. I think he'd be a great fit for the Saints. I don't know if he's a downfield seam guy. I do know he had 5 touchdowns and only 23 catches, so that shows me they're going to him in the red zone. So I like Trey Burton. I think he'd be a nice addition.
To Jason on the West Bank. Jason, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Jason.
Hey, Sean.
Hey.
Do you know if they still looking for another quarterback in the draft like they say a couple days ago or last week?
Jason, thank you for the phone call. All right, let's talk quarterback. What do you think? You think this is the year? You think next year's year? And set the parameters for the audience as well. The difference between drafting a quarterback in the first round where you got him for 5 years and you draft in the second round or beyond. Where you only have
second round or
years.
beyond is a 4-year deal. First round, you get that 5th-year option. Let me just say this. I think there's little doubt that Sean Payton is absolutely enamored with this draft class of quarterbacks. You just don't get this type of quality and quantity every year in a draft when it comes to the game's most important position. Sean Payton knows that. They were ready to draft Patrick Mahomes last year. Could you imagine having Patrick Mahomes right now instead of Marshawn Lattimore? That would have really, probably hurt this team when it came to wins and losses. But in saying that, at 27, to get anyone of the big four, and I think it's Baker Mayfield. I've always felt it's Baker Mayfield. I think it's the best fit. To go up and get that player, you probably have to give up, obviously, your 27th overall pick, third-round pick, probably next year's first, and maybe even a player. Last year,
is Baker Mayfield worth that? Now, I like Baker Mayfield too, and I think he could be a really great quarterback.
Really great quarterback. You answered your own question. Yes, he's worth it.
Okay, so you think he's worth
a 1, a 3, and next year's 1? Yes. Veteran player, we'll see. The Chiefs gave up 27, 91, and next year's first to get Patrick Mahomes because they believe that's their next franchise quarterback. If you believe he's your guy, you get him. And you have the bridge year. You have Drew Brees 1 or even 2 and 2 more years. Plus, like we said before, the absolute must-have is not on this roster. You're drafting for depth, so you're not necessarily hindering yourself in another position by going up and getting him. That's why I believe they would be fools to not even consider it. The problem is the cost just might end up being too steep.
Yeah, and
you got to have a willing partner as well.
Well, and look, not just that. If you're drafted 27, that's not a big cost, really. And again, you're drafting, in the late 20s in every round. If you're going to do it, this is the year to do it.
Exactly.
This is the year to do it.
And they're backloaded as well. They got 2 5s, 2 6s, and a 7.
Yes.
I guarantee you, that's not going to be that way come draft day.
Look, I like Baker Mayfield, and I'll say that right now. I do. I like him. I'm not saying that he's a Drew Brees clone, but I think he's got a lot of the attributes that Brees does, and I think he can go a long way. And if ultimately being the,
I think Sean Payton is going to see a lot of himself in Baker Mayfield. A little undersized, a little cocky, a little emotional, but people gravitate to him, man. I think they're the same guy. I really do.
Let's go to Jack in River Ridge. Jack, welcome. Hey, Jack.
Good evening, guys. Just a couple of quick things.
Sure.
First of all, I think the difference between, the Shoetown tickets when we were kids and now is that, if you didn't get in to see those games, you weren't going to see the games at all.
Right.
To me, unless I have a lower bowl seat, I'm not really interested in sitting in the top. I have a better seat, watching it on cable. And the other thing is, I had one question for Sean. I really like Richardson, the wide receiver from Seattle. I was wondering what your thoughts about him, if the Saints have any interest at all. And, guys, I'll just hang up and listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. I want to get to one more call.
Yeah, I think Richardson would be okay. It would be a decent price. It wouldn't be a bad guy to take a look at. I think the Saints would certainly – and I know that Sean Payton likes that organization, so that would certainly be something. So, yeah, I could see them taking a look at Richardson as well.
Let's grab Greg at home. Greg, thanks for holding. Greg?
Hey, I got a question for Sean.
Yep.
Is there a position you would rather fill free agency versus filling it through the draft? And I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you, Greg.
It's a great question. I think they're going to sign a veteran cornerback. I really do. The guy I like, I don't know if he's going to be available because they're unsure in Washington what they're going to do with him, but I like Kyle Fuller. I had him mocked to the Saints back in 2013 or 14, the first mock draft I ever did, as a matter of fact. I like Kyle Fuller a lot. I think he's a good player. And I also think they're going to add some sort of veteran depth along the offensive line as well.
Sean, thanks as always.
It's been fun.
No, I do a great job. Great job, Fox 8. Do a great job on my radio show, which he's on weekly. And, of course, fantastic job on this program as always. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLE at 10 p.m. Also on Pelican Sports Television. That's 9 o'clock every Friday night. That's statewide. If you're missing the previous episodes, you can check us out at ericasher.com, where you can get all the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports. Check me out on the radio on Sports 1280 and also 101.1 FM HD2. The iHeartRadio app is a free download for your smartphone or tablet. You can also listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com and also at sports1280.com as well. Special thanks to Sean Fazende and the entire staff here at WLAE-TV who do a great job behind the scenes. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll check you out next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I have my show sheet with all my names on it.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com.